Welcome to the Lessons from Psychedelics podcast. My name is Daniel O'Shaughnessy, and today I'm joined by Dr. Miguel Toribio Mateas.
Hello.
How's it going?
Yes, good. Thank you. And you?
That's very formal. Hello.
I know.
So you and I have been, we've known each other for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And in many spheres, I would say, you were actually my tutor at nutrition school, at college. Then we formed this friendship.
Yeah.
And then we almost maybe like dragged each other into the psychedelic world. So I want to talk to you about today and make it fun, make it like, I think because you and I have many conversations offline about psychedelics. We do laugh sometimes about like some things of how psychedelics maybe are being studied. Not laugh, but maybe have comments on it.
Yeah.
We laugh at people taking things too seriously. We also have changed the way we view health now. So we are both advocates for, well, we both were practicing before functional medicine. Now we're going more into this kind of evidence-informed health. So I want to talk about that. First of all, over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm Miguel. I'm a clinical neuroscientist and applied microbiologist with background in nutrition prior to completing my doctoral degree on the gut microbiome and mental health. And what else? I've had experiences of psychedelics in many different lives. So more recently, but also many years ago, both in a spiritual kind of way and recreationally, so I can distinguish between the two, because I think that's quite important as well. Some people may just want to take a little bit of mushrooms to have a giggle, and that doesn't count for the kind of experience that people might get if they take the right dose and in the right setting and with the right mindset. For many years, I was just working on this clinical, evidence-based model of medicine for health that is based on clinical trials and systematic reviews. So you know that something is really working for a specific indication. And that's great when you're trying to deal with an infection or with a condition that has got very clear definitions, and you're trying to achieve a clear endpoint as well with your treatment. Now, with psychedelics, and the reason you were saying about we've changed our mindset around health with psychedelics, I wanted to tap into that because I think with psychedelics, what you get is, apart from everything else that you get, you change your mind as to how you can become healthy without focusing so much on these physical aspects of health. And if I elaborate on that, so if I was sitting with somebody in a consultation room and they were going on about, I don't know, blood tests or microbiome tests. In my case, I did a lot of stool testing, and people were obsessed with parasites or with, they had candida or something. And literally everything that was going on around their lives was based on, oh, I've got this parasite and it's giving me leaky gut, or my candida is like making me flare up in eczema or whatever. And that may be the case. I'm not invalidating that. But with psychedelics, you realize that there's a whole area of your life that you may not have taken into account. So what about your trauma in your previous, in previous years that you may have actually completely forgotten about? There is such a thing in trauma that your brain just paints over it. Yeah. In my own experience, I always thought that my life was wonderful. I had like a happy childhood. I never had, yes, I had problems. Yes, I was sexually abused when I was 8. And yes, I had like a massive trauma in my family because my brother died of cancer when I was 8 and he was 13, and he was ill for 3 years. Terminally, my mom and dad knew that he could go anytime during those 3 years. So it was a massive trauma. I never remembered that trauma. I never remembered any negative feelings. And talking to my therapist, she says, well, it's actually a very normal trauma response. So basically your brain, in terms of self-preservation, just decides to tell you, oh, it was all fine, don't worry about it. Because if you start looking at all the shit that went on during those years, and later, you know, I was beaten up for being gay when I was 16. My nose, my nose was broken in 2 places. My jaw. No, it's good to be able to laugh now. My jaw was broken. I was taken to hospital. I thought, you know, I was full of shame. You know, I had to tell my mom and dad. I was in hospital, full of blood. It was a big thing. And again, I'm thinking, okay, well, that happened to me, but I didn't have like this massive memory of like, oh, how crap it was. Whereas, you know, so your brain goes into that kind of thing. Now you turn 40 or 50 and you've got, I don't know, chronic fatigue. We saw a lot of people with like fatigue symptoms, pain, like fibromyalgia, you know, whatever, eczema, autoimmune, whatever, thyroid, stress, anxiety. Like you go into the mental health spectrum of things and like, you know, it's rife with that kind of thing. And everybody's wanting to find, oh, it must be because my magnesium levels are low in the blood test that I have all these symptoms. Or it must be because I've got candida, or it must be because I've got blastocystis in my stool or something, like a parasite. And I'm thinking, right, so I'm not saying those things are not playing a role, but what I'm saying is that with psychedelics, in my experience, I'm thinking, I completely got over myself with that kind of stuff. I'm thinking, I'm not even paying attention to it, because what is the point of me looking at my parasites when I realize that I've got all this shit to work through, that I've only just been given the chance to. It's not that I've healed completely from it, from the psychedelics, which is another thing that maybe we can talk about, but that I know all of the solutions from psychedelics to deal with the past. But they've given me some tools to actually go into that past and actually think, okay, well, what can I do? Do I need to forgive those people? Is forgiveness even useful? Do I need to feel the uncomfortable feelings that I haven't allowed myself to feel for, you know, years of my life, just thinking, oh, everything was wonderful until it wasn't wonderful and I had a breakdown?
There are plenty of people out there that do that whole painting over everything's fine, whether it's like, you know, they know that there's problems at home or there's previous trauma, that they just act, but then they have all these numbing behaviors that they then go to town on. What I found interesting is being in having the clinic as I've changed my ways of knowing with nutrition. I still think nutrition is a pillar of health.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm not obsessed with it. Like, yes, it's nice to know someone's genetics, for example. It's nice to know these tests and biomarkers, but I'm not fixating going, you are, you know, your methylation gene is XXYB, whatever it is. So therefore you can never have this. And you're going to hyperventilate if you have methyl B12 or something like this, for example, where you and I have been in rooms with practitioners and both clients who are very much fixed in that way of knowing. Yeah. And I think the more you test, the more you're going to find out something. No one's ever going to have a clean test result, ever, I don't think. But it comes to the point of, for me, especially when I was even working on myself as in the nutrition way, doing stool tests, NutriVal, genetics, doing all these things to improve my health. But on the back of it, I was partying at the weekend, taking drugs. I was taking anabolic steroids, eating, you know, not having a massive amount of stress. You know, the amount of trauma that I had from working in the company I had with my brother, that, and I just completely painted over that. And it was like, that's part I'm not going to focus on. I can focus on the controls. I can control my B vitamin intake. I can control, and if I do a test and it's not right, I can find a new protocol to focus on. Or really, and what also I found with nutrition is that I can restrict my diet. Sometimes restricting my diet, whether it was removing, for example, a food group like gluten or carbs or something like that, it actually gave me that kind of punishment that I felt I needed. Mm-hmm. And that was one of my numbings. Like if I really beast myself with exercise and really cut down food, regardless but the funny thing is I used to cherry pick the data. Mm-hmm. I used to focus on my B vitamin needs and all this, but forget my good cholesterol was tanking because I was on steroids. Forget my liver enzymes. Oh, my liver enzymes are fine, no problem. I'll just take some milk thistle. They're elevated. And I never used to think the fact that I couldn't sleep at night because I was taking anabolic steroids was an issue. But what the psychedelics have done, not in the first instance and gone, that's your problem. It's just allowed me to gently have that awareness.
Yeah, and letting go a little bit of the control, because I completely resonate with you as well. I mean, for years and years and years, again, I never thought I had a problem with food until basically like 3 years ago, I had this massive burnout. And then I realized, I think I've probably been bulimic my whole life because I've been purging and not allowing myself to like feasting, basically just binging, and then not quite purging as in like making myself sick. But for years I remember I used to take laxatives for like in my 20s, and then I stopped, and then I went up that I left that behind. And then the later iteration was fasting. So I thought fasting was wonderful because I thought it just gave me the control of not eating. But what I used to do, I used to yo-yo. So initially I was quite naturally skinny in my 20s, and then I started going into like, I put a little bit of weight. I lost a lot of weight, and it would be around doing something like I would go to Ibiza for a week, and I would lose a lot of weight to get into a 28 waist trousers. I would wear my pink Prada trousers in Amnesia or something on the podium, and then come back and lose like 5 kilos in Ibiza because I would eat like one crisp in the whole week or something, and then come back and literally just eat and put on 10 kilos in the next 3 months.
Plus feeling awful from burning your serotonin out. But no, that's not the issue. The fact is that, your pathways or something are...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I did a lot of that. And one of the things actually that came out of... I know we're going to talk about whether we believe what we see in the trips or not or whatever. But one of the... Sometimes you get this like massive clarity around like... It's almost like a topic. It's almost like... it's not a story. It's almost like a heading. It's almost like something comes to you and it's just like trust or strength, and this voice is telling you you're strong, or trust yourself. And the thing that was really clear to me was about do not overcompensate for things that have happened in your life, and do not numb, and trust yourself. And it was kind of like part of the same thing. It was almost like headings in a document that you then fill out.
Yeah.
And the filling out, it can happen during the trip, but the filling out of those headings, it could be later. It could be like 3 months later. It could be that suddenly you think, shit, that makes sense now, what I felt. And it could be that what you see in the trip is complete bollocks. It's just like, it's your brain farting, basically, just taking you different places. You think it's wonderful. You think you're going to make a movie the next day, or, you whatever. It could be something completely, it could be from anything tiny to massive. And I'm sure we both have loads of situations like that to share. But it's more about, for me, it was about do not go back for seconds after the ayahuasca. Why are you going back for seconds?
Or food-wise.
You're addicted. You're addicted to the food in the same way that a lot of people are addicted to other things. And you're using that addiction to actually compensate for not wanting to look into the painful feelings that you felt in your life.
But I do wonder whether all of that is in your subconscious already. And then what I've done is I've come out going, right, I'm never going to do that again. And I've suddenly put this massive pressure on myself, because suddenly if I want to, say, for instance, overeat for whatever reason, I'm only human. I've got this new voice in my head going, well, you've done ayahuasca now. You shouldn't be doing that. And I do find when I've come out of this, I think it can resonate with your personality of how if you're naturally hard on yourself, you can come out with this like, right, I'm perfect. I'm going to have to be perfect now because I've done this special magic medicine. And now I have to never drink again, never take a drug, never eat perfectly the rest of my life. Wake up at 4 a.m., have that, entrepreneurial life, not just all that kind of stuff. And I find that the more I do, the more it's like unpicking that pressure and going, just calm down a little bit. I think I think you're right in that the headings come. And I think for me, they come in quotes. Because one came to me, and I think I put it on the fridge, like, you're so used to being yourself, you forgot who you really are. And that was me. I was so locked in the way I thought I knew. My boundaries were all up, and I had my control mechanisms, and no one could hurt me because I wouldn't let them in. I think you just have to not rush this as well.
Yeah.
Is that the lessons that you get from the psychedelics, big ones like you've mentioned, control. I've done a monologue control.
Yeah.
That was a huge thing for me. Understanding things like rejection, forgiveness. Like these are concepts that we don't necessarily go too much into detail because it brings out a lot of emotion.
I resonate with you on how long it can take. This is why I was saying to you that sometimes the meaning of whatever you experience could come 3 months later. It could be 6 months later. I felt really bad physically I'm starting to feel a bit better now, but I had a really rough period of my life where I really burnt out, and I had loads of chronic pain in my body and fibromyalgia. I was, to the point that I'm in bed and I'm moving around because the pain is actually waking me up in the middle of the night several times, and which makes me laugh because in a way, when I used to see people with fibromyalgia, I always thought it was bullshit. And they were sitting in front of me and they were going on about how, the fibromyalgia is terrible and they've got brain fog and everything else. And I'm thinking, I haven't really got a protocol for fibromyalgia that is going to cure them. I know I can give them, B12 for energy because they are knackers, and I can give them, whatever, or that B6 or whatever for like more brain activity, and I can give them something for the gut because there's a gut-brain connection, but there isn't a clear way to deal with it. And I was quite confused as to how to deal with it, to be quite honest. And I saw a fair few fibromyalgia people. And then when I actually was told that I had fibromyalgia, I kind of understood how shit it was. And the reason why I'm saying this is I think there's a parallel between the reflective way that you get into your mind when you have pain all the time and you need to make your world smaller because you cannot cope with the intensity of the world that has got, loads of acquaintances that don't mean anything, and you're restricted to just your friends and you make it smaller. Loads of contracts that are abusive and they are not making you feel joy. They are kind of like, sucking your energy. Then you cut them, and maybe you cut your salary a little bit, but, being self-employed, kind of like you become a bit more restrictive as to who you work with, and you make your world smaller. And all of that, in a way, in itself is the result of reflecting on what life is about and what things are important in life. And so there is a parallel between that and psychedelics. So the timing for me with psychedelics and my kind of like experience of psychedelics during that period has been quite interesting because it's almost like I came back from an ayahuasca experience. I came back with COVID and my dog died after I came back, and I got really down because of that. I'm only just coming out of being quite depressed because of that. So I wanted to take those messages harder maybe than I could, but I was more aware of my limitations. And I think having had that very physical limitations where some days I'm in so much pain, I cannot really move a lot. And having had the kind of my brain not wanting to work, so it's a struggle to do any more than I need to do in a day, have actually helped me not to be over eager to take on all the messages and think, I'm going to be wonderful. I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to write a book. I came back with like my book already, the chapters in my journal from the ayahuasca experience. I think if I had been completely in top health, probably 20 years younger, and like not a worry in the world, and with a lot of energy to spare, I may have been tempted to just like jump into like writing the book about my experience and wanting to train everybody on how you feel when you experience ayahuasca and all of that. And I think there is a risk in taking the lessons that, or the messages that you hear, as opposed to the lessons, the messages that you experience in a too literal way. So I think you need to step back of the experience, think about what they mean in real life, soften it, and maybe in about 3 months' time, you think, actually, that was a good one. Or I'm going to go back and have seconds, and fuck it, I'm going to have thirds today because I'm hungry and, ayahuasca doesn't tell me what to do. So, there is that kind of thing as well. And everybody's got some shit going on in their lives. That is my shit. Some people may not have pain, may not have, they may be in good health, but they have a lot of worries, and that is their pain, is mental dispersion. They're like kind of like too much out there, and they cannot like gather their mind to be in one single place. They may be too worried about something, or it could be family, it could be finances, it could be, so everybody's got something they are dealing with. And I think realizing that life is imperfect is one of the beauties of the psychedelics, because you learn to realize that it's not that you come out and you're going to be perfect, because ayahuasca has made you see, mushrooms or whatever have made you see the world in such a way that you have been touched by God, and now you have been enlightened, and you know everything. It's more about realizing that the world actually is a bit fucked up and it's a little bit imperfect, and it's fine because that's how it's supposed to be, and then you just roll with it.
Well, you touched on two different things here. Well, 2 points. The first is like you, I came out of all my experiences, and I wanted to write a new book. I wanted to do documentaries, and I wanted to do this podcast. And I started writing, and it was about 18 months ago I had this idea to start doing this. And only now I've been able to bring it into fruition. But it was like, in the actual experience, all your limiting beliefs just are not there. All your pain or your illness is not there, or whatever it is. So you're there with just creativity. What would you do if you didn't have to work? You could just, what would you do if you were highly motivated all the time? And I suppose this probably ties into what people do with microdosing, because I know I want to talk to you also about ADHD, and whether the psychedelics can have an impact on it. But the other side of it is, at what point do we come out of this trip going, we're special? Is there a slight spiritual narcissism attached to doing ayahuasca that you have to then have a fact check on yourself and go like, look, you haven't got gospel information. What you've got is like a nice, you've been given a nice little map that you can follow if you want. And there's no drama, no pressure, but then the ego kicks in and goes, well, actually, I'll make pressure on this, or whatever it is. Or I'm special. I have to have some special juice that people haven't had, or it goes on. But these are the 2 things that I think are quite important from it. I think for me, it was a huge uphill struggle coming out of psychedelic experiences and thinking, what do I want to do with this? And how do I, first of all, that humbling experience you have. I've gone through, the metaphorical deaths we have, realizing that we're not that important, and then having that shedding process of oh, the world's still going to go around when I'm not here in it. The idea that not to be so attached to my ideas I put out in the world. Yes, I'm going to put this podcast out. It's not going to be perfect. There are people that like it, people that don't like it, and that's okay. I think the problem is that in an ayahuasca or a mushroom trip, you're so motivated that it's not necessarily a traditional come down, but you just have to come back to reality and the pressures come back in. So that's where you have to really think, what do I want to do and how much pressure do I need to put on myself to be able to achieve this? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
You have the diagnosis of ADHD and you have a diagnosis of autism, correct? Now, I'm not an expert on ADHD. I just want to speak about this purely for the audience and your impression of it. Really, if psychedelics can have an impact on it, what it really means, what's your take on it, And should we just accept the fact that you're ADHD and that's it? Or, you know, I'm ADHD, I need the medication. And I know this is quite a hot topic at the moment. People are, you know, claiming that there's easy ways to get diagnosis. Half of America is on Adderall. You know, it's like it's a huge thing. What are your, like, as a neuroscientist, what are your thoughts on ADHD, being ADHD yourself?
So I've been ADHD since I was born, because you're either ADHD or you're not ADHD. You cannot be a little bit ADHD. I think metaphorically people use it because ADHD sounds a bit like, you know, quirky and, you know, and kooky and forgetful and creative. And so it can be used a bit like people say you're a bit OCD. You're either OCD or you're not OCD as well. So I think as these things come into the mainstream, people kind of just blur the lines. It's like people say, oh, everybody's on a spectrum. You're either autistic or you're not autistic. So there's that kind of like differentiation. When it comes to ADHD and hacking it, like some people say, you know, you can hack your ADHD with like breath work or
cold
meditation, cold showers. I mean, my eyes roll so hard back. It's like, okay, it's ADHD is a thing that can be completely random. You can have a wonderful day that you don't feel like you're anything. You can have a completely shit day that you feel that you cannot be bothered to get out of bed and you're completely exhausted just because something that has happened maybe a few days before has had an impact emotionally and you haven't been able to regulate your emotions properly. And that carries the energy forward. So then you end up feeling like completely exhausted a few days later. It's got so many different ways that it can manifest itself. And it can manifest itself differently in girls and boys. So women and men will feel different on ADHD. For me, the key thing is emotional regulation. We can be extremely emotionally sensitive on the basis that what happens with ADHD, the part of the brain that processes emotions kind of like takes over the part of the brain that processes like logic and executive function, which is the more like the cortex of the brain, where you make decisions, you make sense of things. Imagine that is the logical part of the brain and the more emotional part of the brain. On ADHD, it's more emotional. So when you need to do something that is completely logical, you may not do it in a logical way. That can give you an edge in a creative situation because non-creative people may be more logical, but then you need that edge that is a bit more emotional, and suddenly the ADHD person has an advantage because it's more creative. But it doesn't mean that everybody who's ADHD is going to be super creative. That's also a myth. It's like saying that everybody who's autistic is going to be able to count all the beans in a jar just by looking at the jar. Or, you know, it's going to be super organized, because there can be a thing about, like, you know, it could be if you're burnt out because your autism as well, it's got a lot of overlaps with ADHD. And if you have both, it's even more complicated. It can mean that if you have an emotion now and then you have an emotion an hour later and then an emotion another hour later, the person who is neurotypical can switch from one emotion and from one task to another in a gracious kind of way. You know, you just finished doing this podcast, we all go, you switch on the TV and you start watching the TV and you relax into that, and then you make yourself something to eat. Somebody phones you and gives you bad news. Oh, that's a shame. You know, you put the phone down, you know, there is that. And you kind of like go up and down, you're riding the wave. If you're ADHD, autistic, but let's say ADHD, if you're ADHD and somebody phones you and gives you those bad news, that can be such an impact on you that it just takes over the whole of the energy of your day.
Yeah.
It can make you exhausted just thinking that you need to switch to something else. Like, for example, to me, today, I was saying to my other half about, I didn't know whether I was going to stay with you or I'm going to stay with my friend Alessandra. So,
Are you trying to tell everyone that you're married? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, loves. Spoken for.
Yeah.
I'm a bit fat, so I'm not wearing my ring. So, so basically, he's going on about, why don't you just like go and see Alessandra? Because you always blow her out.
Yeah.
I say, okay, I know, but I'm thinking about having to get to Wimbledon from from Daniels. It's kind of like doing my head in, because it's one more thing that I need to account for in my day. And he says, but the tubes are working. So what is your problem? I'm saying, it's just thinking about the next thing that I need to do. Yeah. Whereas if I stay at Daniels, it's just, I've come from home to the tube, and then I stay at Daniels. It's just one single thing. If I have to go to Alessandra's, then I have to leave Daniels, go to the tube, take the tube, go to Wimbledon, walk from, and it's all like too many things. Yeah. And each thing can have an impact on how I feel, because but
at the same time, you're organizing all of this with everyone,
Well, exactly. And this is it. It's very internalized for me. So people that think I'm just like happy-go-lucky, and I just I turn up and I'm like, super, spontaneous. Whereas I'm thinking, if I'm going to go out, I need to know what I'm wearing, including my socks, and my underwear, like 3 months before. And it's
not amnesia anymore, darling.
It needs to be color coordinated, and you know what I mean. So or if I'm like arranging my plants in my conservatory, mm-hmm. and they need to match in threes, because in twos it just breaks my brain. So if I put 2 plants together, it doesn't work.
Right. So
if I put 3 plants together, it works, and then I can relax. So there's a lot of things that everybody will experience differently, but ADHD is super, super complicated. I think it can help to push your executive function a little harder with medication, mm-hmm. which is what the medication does, because executive function, the main neurotransmitter that helps that boost that part of the brain is dopamine, mm-hmm. and noradrenaline. So if you take a medication that actually increases a little bit of noradrenaline that can be converted to dopamine and dopamine, then what you end up doing is you end up focusing more. You may work longer hours without questioning yourself, or without procrastinating so much or whatever. But is that what you want to do? Because I did that for 18 months, and I took my tablet as I opened my eyes. It was on my bedside cabinet. I took a tablet. The moment I opened my eyes, I felt like I had a strong coffee. I was active, as opposed to maybe messing around the house for an hour and mm-hmm. having 3 coffees before waking up and whatever. I was active. I was working. I was kind of but it didn't cure my ADHD. It didn't make me normal. I was still ADHD. And I think because your brain learns to modify its behaviors.
It was painting over again, wasn't it?
Well, that's it. And for me, it took about a year. It was probably a year, 14 months to realize my brain is learning that it can trump these drugs now. So what I'm doing, I'm getting high in the morning with the ADHD drugs. I'm kind of thinking, oh, this is nice, but I'm gonna have I'm gonna go on Pornhub or something for an hour, or I'm just gonna, I'm gonna have a decaf and watch Netflix for an hour, rather than, because I think
decaf.
Yeah, because I couldn't have caffeine, because the thing is I had caffeine for the first few days of
1 minute. You were just saying you're in Ibiza for a week, only eating a crisp.
I know, but
and now you're all sensitive with decaffeinated coffee and an
ADHD tablets and caffeine is a bad combination. It's basically speed and coffee together,
but that would be a natural thing for me if I was on those pills, to think coffee's fine, I can handle it.
Yeah,
I would be. I know myself that well to know I want to cheat the system, for example. Yeah. Like when people I've tried various ADHD medication that friends have given me, disclaimer, but I've had that feeling. It feels like I know what you're feeling. That feeling of you feel great. So why would
you feel good? And initially, it actually felt really good, because it gave me. I was really down with the fibromyalgia. It kind of because dopamine is involved in motivation. It can be a little bit of an antidepressant without being an SSRI or being antidepressants normally work on serotonin, but. And this takes me to the point, the brain doesn't work on just one single thing. When you have sex, it's not just about the cock. It's about the cock and the balls and the body and the person, and whether they talk or they don't talk. They talk too much, they talk too little. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and a tacit connection.
Yeah, exactly. So you cannot say, oh, sex is just about anal, or sex is just about oral. It has to be a little bit of
Some
everything.
people are, though.
Some people, yeah.
But then they're very controlled in the way they enjoy things.
Yeah. But it has to have a mix of things.
Yeah.
Like life, like lunch. If you make a salad, it cannot just be tomato. It has to be tomato and a bit of lettuce or whatever. In the brain, even though dopamine is actually doing the boosting of the cortex, the prefrontal cortex, and giving your executive function a bit of a boost and making you feel like you are in control of like things, and you can procrastinate less because you are more motivated to jump on the task and finish it. You still need other things that are going on in your life as well. You need connection, you need friends, you need to talk, you need like oxytocin from bonding with people, you need serotonin from being happy and in a good mood, and from sleeping properly. If you haven't slept properly, your serotonin is going to be, is going to suffer as a result. The dopamine alone, the drugs alone are not going to be a solution for everybody. Saying that, some people do wonderfully on the drugs.
Yeah.
But if we leave the actual ADHD drugs and we talk about psychedelics and ADHD, I think with psychedelics and ADHD for me, it's more about embracing your ADHD.
Right.
And about, so knowing your ADHD. With ADHD, like everybody, ADHD or non-ADHD, but with ADHD particularly, let's talk, you have a rhythm of your day. You know that you may actually not be your best you may not be the best productive person until 11 o'clock in the morning, and that's fine. So don't try to be super productive at 9 o'clock by taking the ADHD medication. Take the psychedelic maybe mid-morning.
You mean microdosing?
Microdosing.
Yeah, not a full 7-gram trip.
No. You don't want to be doing that.
I'm dying.
I know. So you take your microdose, and like an hour before you're going to do something, and maybe start with very small microdose.
The annoying thing with this is like psychedelics are only legal in some places.
Exactly.
So it's hard for some people to get access to microdosing.
Yeah.
This is what I've got, we've got to say. It's very difficult to have access to this.
Yeah, completely. But then again, people are talking about it. So if people 100%. Are talking about it and you're ADHD and you want to experiment with it, and full disclaimer, if the country you're in, psychedelics are illegal, do not do anything illegal.
Yeah.
But, if you can manage to get hold of some psychedelics that you can microdose, mushrooms, you can microdose really easily, in tiny amounts. Then what you're doing is basically, rather than actually wanting you to, it's going to work on your serotonin, it's not going to work on your dopamine. So it may make you a little bit more fluid. You may actually lose a little bit of the things that are holding you back. So it's not going, it's going to be a completely different experience. So it's not going to be the Adderall or the methylphenidate, the Ritalin experience.
When I've had microdosing, the noticeable things, I'm just more in more in the present moment.
Yeah.
Like comparing this to say like Adderall, Ritalin or whatever, when you're like completely focused and you just, you're high. Microdosing, I do get a whiff of like I've got someone tickling my neurotransmitters going, here you are, we're here to play. But I'm just a nicer person to be around. I'm not worried about, like you say, that I'll probably be similar to you, worried about how I'm going to get to someone's house afterwards. I'm in the moment, I'm doing my work. I feel I can articulate myself better. Now, I don't have an ADHD diagnosis, and I don't really feel that I need to, because I'm kind of understanding myself a bit better naturally with the use of psychedelics. But is this similar, what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's almost like with the ADHD medication, you are literally just looking down with a laser focus onto your work. And with the psychedelics, you're almost like, your focus is a little bit wider. But it's 360, so you're included in the focus as opposed to just the task, and you're forgetting yourself. You're including yourself in what you're doing.
You take more time for yourself. You realize when you're tired. You realize when you, like you say, you realize you've worked out that your times of motivation, I'm assuming, is past 11 a.m. So you're going to produce your best work. The thing I have with that is I still have the scar of working as a full-time employee. And I think I should be at my desk at 8 o'clock, clicking around on the laptop, when if I need to write something, I need to do it when I'm at my most productive time. How would I get past that? Not about using, but like the guilt. I don't know. I'm just trying to put myself in this situation where I know I'm better off writing my creative things at 4 p.m. onwards, say. But I sit at my desk at 9 a.m. and sit there and go, I should be, and I start to feel guilty, and I start to feel more pressure, and then all the limiting thoughts come in. How do I get beyond, like, how do I just get that point of just going?
Well, I just finished answering about the ADHD, autism, any neurodivergence that people might have, because I think with psychedelics, what you're getting is as I mentioned with the task, you will create an awareness of yourself that you didn't have before. Microdosing obviously works completely different to a higher dose, but that it can give you that whiff of, what it is to experience that. It can give you a little bit of it's almost like a tiny taste of a mystical experience, a tiny taste of everyday spirituality. And there is a thing that I am very interested in, and I'm launching something on that soon, which is Japanese philosophy, Zen Buddhism, and Shintoism. That mix of different kind of spiritual traditions that there is in Japan, with the whole wackiness of Japan, which is completely wacky. But there is this thing called wabi-sabi, which is it's about celebrating the impermanence and the imperfection of life. Is to do with how you value something more because it's a little bit more aged and it's cookie, and it's got a bit of it's got a few dents, as opposed to just be completely spanking new. That is on a material kind of element. In terms of like spiritual interpretation of it, we all have flaws, we all have trauma in our lives, we all have things that we are not completely happy with, physically and emotionally. But accepting those flaws and actually embracing them, not in a toxic positivity kind of way. It's like, everything is wonderful, to celebrate life and live your best life all the time. No, it may be that it makes you a bit uncomfortable to look at yourself in the mirror at certain times of the day. It may be that it makes you uncomfortable to look into your mind and certain things, but they are there. So if you ignore them, they're only going to come back to haunt you. So it's just creating that awareness that it doesn't mean that you need to completely forgive yourself all the time. It doesn't mean that you need to celebrate yourself for being wonderful when you may not be wonderful all the time. It's a simple acknowledgement that things are not always going to be perfect. They may be perfect now, but they may be not perfect tomorrow. And then in the end, everything kind of like balances out.
So this is something you're launching like this, because it's basically psychedelic philosophy.
It's psychedelic philosophy. And if you actually go and ask ChatGPT about wabi-sabi and psychedelics.
ChatGPT's on mushrooms.
Exactly. ChatGPT, whatever. Just do a search on the internet about wabi-sabi and psychedelics. And it's literally just the same thing. And that's why I love this. I was obsessed with Japan. My first job was in a Japanese company when I was 18. I did previous jobs, packing things in a toy shop and stuff like that, going back to being 14. But my proper office job was with Japanese people. And I was completely mesmerized how they were so bonkers. They were so cookie, and I was just completely into Japan. Everything, the cookies and the jars that the cookies came in, and the whole geometry and everything. I've been completely obsessed for years and years.
So what you're launching, will it be ready by the time this episode is aired?
It may be.
Am I pressuring you? Because if it is, I'll put the link at the bottom of the episode.
But it's not quite ready yet.
It's not quite ready yet.
No.
Well, when it is, maybe I'll edit it.
It's not quite.
If you see the link at the bottom of the episode,
it's still too imperfect.
if you see the link at the bottom of the episode, it's there. It's ready.
Yeah.
I've won.
Okay.
I've bullied you into it.
All right. Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there's a lot of that, and I think that's why I resonate with the psychedelic philosophy so much, because it makes you see things for what they are and accept them without the glossing over, or without wanting to make them good, or without wanting to compensate. And if you see something that has got a couple of marks and you think, how cute is that? And I haven't seen it being so beautiful before, even if it's marked, as opposed to like, oh my God, it's got 2 scratches on it. Oh my God, my iPhone screen has got scratched. And how many of us have got completely stressed out because our iPhone screen has got, scratched or broken a corner or something. When you think, okay, is that in the greater scheme of things, is that the worst thing that can happen? My mom always says something. She's quite cute, my mom. She's, 87. She always says something about when something happens. It's like my sister's fridge broke the other day. Oh, do you know about your sister's fridge? It's broken again. She's had to buy a new one. I said, yeah, I know about my sister's fridge. But she says, well, anyway, if that is the worst thing that can happen to anybody, then we would be fine. Because it's like, her fridge broke. She lives in an old building in the center of Barcelona, which is a bastard to bring a fridge into, because it's like, the walls are like this, like, narrow. And so it was a chore to bring the fridge, but she managed it. She managed to bring it up, and that, everything is working now and it's fine. So it kind of like puts things into perspective. And then what my mom says, the main things, something that you cannot sort out, I think it goes back to my brother dying, and, and she lost another baby, and she's quite acquaintance with death. And says the only thing that you cannot sort out is death, because
can't control death.
You basically, it takes you when it wants to take you, and that's it. And again, it's very psychedelic. It's very kind of why are you worried so much about all of this shit that you have in your brain when you die? That's it. It's like,
so there's things I really want to dissect from what you're saying. Death is one huge thing. I want to talk about death because I don't think people talk about it enough. But someone said to me, you either fear of making a fool out of yourself or you fear of dying. Nothing else. The other thing you said I resonate with is that you'll be okay in the end. When in 2017, when I literally had nothing, everything was taken away from me, from my brother. I had this business. Whatever reason we fell out, blah blah blah. I thought it was like the worst day of my life. But in actual fact, that day was like a gift. It was the best thing that happened to me disguised as the worst thing that happened to me. So then it was all kind of, and it was like, I thought at the time, and I was trying to avoid all these emotions and numb them. But in the end, I learned to accept the kind of journey of it. Mm-hmm. One thing that really struck me was feeling pain I never allowed myself to feel pain or emotions before. Mm-hmm. But in these psychedelic experiences, I was crying. I was feeling pain. I was healing, but healing hurt me and I felt good. I saw another point of view. I was in an Ayahuasca, the one I was in with you. Mm-hmm. I come out going, I have no idea what that message was, but I felt awful, like humiliated. And I was going through all these emotions, but then I just thought, this is really healing for me to feel these emotions, because I've been avoiding them all my life. Because like you said, I don't want to scratch on my face. I don't want to scratch on the iPhone screen. I want my perfect life, and I want to show the perfect life to the world. But allowing the imperfection was one of the most incredible things I've actually allowed myself to have. Like allowing, which then translated into that, allowing myself to have an off day, allowing myself to feel bad if I want to feel bad, feel good if I want to feel good, not feeling guilty so much. So that's something that I really took, especially from what you're saying.
And that taps into an area that I think is really important for anybody, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent. I think neurodivergent ADHD autism is a massive thing, emotional regulation, changing from one emotion to another. But for anybody at all, is this emotional agility that I bought you the book by this lady called Susan David, and she is a Harvard psychologist who articulates the whole thing beautifully, and it's basically just what you said. Emotions are not negative or positive. They may be more helpful at the time that you feel them, or more uncomfortable to feel. But they need to be felt for a reason, because when you feel those uncomfortable emotions, what you're doing is basically they are identifying what your values are, and if you feel something that is uncomfortable, it's basically saying, are you allowing yourself to feel this enough? That was my feeling as well. Particularly the retreat we did together, the second night. My first night was I had a massive breakdown about my brother. I realized that I hadn't actually grieved my brother, and that was like, most of the night I was completely, I was the loudest person crying.
And that was in the back of your brain.
Yeah.
Since you were,
I was 8.
8.
And I'm 50. So basically it's been there for like 42 years. And I didn't allow myself to. I always thought it was sad that my brother died, but I never felt the need to.
Do you see it
need to cry? It's making me emotional. I'm
sorry
thinking about it.
It's really, I saw you doing it and I was like, this is my best friend going through like all his trauma. And that was like a beautiful thing, making me emotional. Don't make me cry. But like in the process of like, that was ayahuasca running Clean My Mac on your brain.
Yeah.
I found that junk file and it's like, hang on, this is a bad file. We need to get that out. Come on.
Yeah, completely. And the second day the first day I kind of like went into my sexual abuse, and because my sexual abuse was quite fucked up, because I was not just abused, I was groomed by a small group of 2 brothers and a cousin who basically just like groomed me to a bigger group of guys who just like took their cocks out for me to play with, and they were like 4 or 5 years older than me. And it just got to the point that I was like, I was touching like about like 15 guys every day or something in like the back of somebody's building and all this kind of stuff. It was quite surreal. And the thing is that in a way, I never felt that it was wrong.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I didn't know whether it was right or wrong. I was a child. I shouldn't have experienced that. I didn't have a concept. But again, I think the first day, I kind of like went a little bit into it, but I came out of it and I went into glowing things, into things that I'm going to do. And like, I think, and again, is that a bias thing? Is that something that you project? And because you're in that space, you just think, I'm going to, now let me experience what the future is going to be. It's almost like you wish a bit of clairvoyance on the psychedelic kind of thing. And then the second day, I didn't know what to expect. I was actually a bit more nervous the second day, because the first day we were tired because we had arrived.
But the second day always hits you harder with ayahuasca. So usually in ceremonies, you do 2 ceremonies or 3 ceremonies. The first ceremony, you have all your expectations.
Yeah.
So you think, how is this going to work? The second ceremony, it kind of like hits you harder because your guard's down a bit. You might be like, oh, that was lovely yesterday. Or like, oh, I saw a few colors and I saw,
Yeah.
The second day is when you do the work.
It was completely traumatic. First, I thought I was going to die. Literally, I've had like psychedelic deaths before when, I've actually felt that I've died, and I've watched my dogs in front of me when I was looking at my hands, and my hands were decrepit. Like I had been dead for like 3 months. And I had been in a coffin for 3 months, and I could see my bones, like, and I was making notes in a journal, and my hands looked like a zombie's hands, and it was cool. It didn't freak me out.
That was
and
mushrooms, yeah.
Yeah, and I had actually died, and and it was fine, and I was completely at ease with the fact that I had died, and the world continued without me, and I've had like many different experiences of death in different variations, but with ayahuasca, that I literally thought I had a bit of a panic attack because I couldn't let go, and the lady that was there was just completely beautiful. I had to come out of the yurt because I thought I was going to pass out.
Yeah.
I think I was hyperventilating and everything. It's literally a panic attack.
Well, it's like ayahuasca hits so differently to mushrooms in the fact that it's like an egg cracking like that, and you can't, it just goes wrong, and you stop your thoughts. You can't think.
Yeah.
And all you do is you're in this world and you are experiencing stuff, and you're being taken on this like a roller coaster. We all see different things. But if you try and hold on to that, that's when you're going to have like the bad trip. Or
Well, exactly. I was trying to control it, and literally I had to come out, and she gave me a cup of tea, and she said, well, you really do need to come back, but when you're ready, I'm not going to push you. Mm-hmm. This is my job, because I kept apologizing.
God, she must have seen a few sites.
And she said, of course, she said, why you keep apologizing? And I started crying, and I said, I keep doing this all my life. I just keep apologizing for everything. She said, well, I'm getting that you've got a lot of shit to work through, and I've been there. I'm going to be here with you. If you need me to be here with you for the 7 hours, I'm going to be here with you.
That was a nice place, yeah.
But I recommend that you go back and deal with your demons, because you're here for this. You're here for the hard work. You haven't. And I said, I have come here on my own volition. I've come here because I wanted to get into the shit that's going on in my brain, because I have a feeling that's got something to do with how I'm feeling physically. And my body's holding to this shit that has been hidden in my brain for many years. And if I don't deal with it, I'm not going to heal. I said, well, you're telling me that what you want to do is to go back. Yeah. And I went back. And I grieved my best friend who died by suicide when in the 90s. I grieved my brother again. I went into the whole sexual abuse thing, and I felt so angry. I felt distressed. I felt the pain of grief. It was all this kind of at the time I was thinking negative feelings, but I'm thinking they were helping me, because they were feelings that I needed to feel. It's almost like I hadn't ticked the box. I had been running this program where, because of the way that my brain is wired and my life trajectory, I didn't tick that box. I just went through, and it was too uncomfortable. It was too painful for me to feel grief, so I ignored it. It was too painful for me to feel sad, so I took drugs and I went clubbing. It was too, so it was all of this kind of stuff that we all resonate with. It was like pain. You mask the pain, you numb the pain with food, with drugs, with alcohol, with sex,
especially gay men.
Promiscuity. It's just easier to just I was in relationships, but whenever I was single, I was on kind of on the gaydar room, troll up in the room, up and down, and having sex with 4 different guys in a day. And what was that? What was I trying to numb with that? Because it wasn't because I was so horny. Yes, I may have had the horniness, but ultimately, what are you trying to do that you need to have sex with 4 different people in a day? It's kind of it's incongruous. You've had sex. Why do you need to have sex another 3 times?
Well, this is also a lot of people may disagree with you here, because they may not have that experience, but the whole high and horny, the gay man where they're fucking all weekend, for that, is it a dopamine hit? What is it? Feeling
you're trying to deal with something.
You're dealing with something. If you're taking drugs involved.
Yeah.
You're numbing something. You're trying to get validation at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a cocktail of mess.
It's a cocktail of mess, and whatever it is, I'm not saying having sex on drugs is wonderful. Don't get me wrong. It feels really nice to have sex on ecstasy and whatever else, and it's a wonderful experience. Having sex is a wonderful experience.
Some it's not.
I'm not criticizing any of that.
No.
But what I'm saying is that when you're doing it in a way that is compulsive, it's almost like gambling. It's almost like, playing cards. If we now play contract here, or poker, it's fine. It's fun. But if we start betting, £50 a pot, that's when it starts, and you start getting into funny behaviors, and and you have to steal to get £50, and it starts getting funny when you start mixing drugs into the sex. It's kind of why do you enjoy the sex without the drugs anymore? It starts blending the boundaries.
Or if you need the drugs to have sex, I know I've come across many people who can't have sex without drugs.
Well, exactly. This is what I'm saying.
It's too vulnerable. Yeah. I am bare naked in front of you. You have the opportunity to judge me.
Yeah.
On top of that, I have to perform.
Yeah.
If I take a numbing drug, it's I don't have to think about I don't care what you think of me for that 10 seconds.
And this is really interesting because I haven't been like in the clubbing scene and taking drugs for like many, many years now. I'm like, I did that in the 90s and the noughties mostly, a lot. But I got more into drinking, just like, not like masses, but, the odd drink just to relax at home, whatever. With every time that I've had the psychedelics, it's almost like made me not want to have anything that makes my brain cloudy.
Yeah.
It's almost like the message, and it's not an immediate message. It's almost like the days after and the weeks after. It's like I didn't drink. I've only drank for Christmas because I didn't fancy it last year, and then we were going to the retreat, so I started like not drinking from January. So I had a completely clear January. I think I had one glass of champagne or something, and then it's made me not want to drink for the rest of the year. So I've just been drinking like alcohol-free beer, or not actually even like drink. And the alcohol-free beer is a relatively new thing that I found that is helping my other half not drink. So I've kind of like joined him on drinking that. I'm quite happy just drinking San Pellegrino or something, or like, just drinking a herbal tea. Whereas before, the drink, I'm not a natural drinker, but the drink had crept in because I was doing it to fit in with my other half who drinks. I was doing it because it feels like if I'm in a social situation and I'm not drinking, I'm the odd one not drinking, and I need to explain myself. Oh, you're not drinking. Oh, you are teetotal. It's like I hate that chit chat. That is like completely ridiculous.
The alcohol is the only drug that you have to explain why you're not taking it.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like, are you not? And it's almost like the thing that people say about autistic people hate small talk. My ADHD side takes over, and I love small talk. So I can do the eye contact and the small talk and all of that. But when it's irrelevant,
just even a hairdresser.
Yeah, when it's irrelevant, I completely
it's the worst.
hate it.
Going to like a party, you don't know people, and then one thing for me is when I go to a party and I don't know someone, and of course, like the first 3 questions in that are, what do you do for a living, right?
Yeah.
And what happens when you say, I'm a nutritionist?
Oh, I want to lose weight.
I've got diarrhea. I'm like, it's Saturday night, like, and these are the things that, I struggle with. So you touched on feelings of dying in psychedelic experiences. In mine, I've had many roundabout experiences where I think I'm dying, whether I think I'm, I'm not, but I have this, I think I'm holding as much possible onto my ego or thoughts or patterns of belief. I don't want to let go. Have you had these similar experiences?
Yeah, I have. And I've had a range of them, from fully feeling that I was literally dying and it wasn't scary. It was kind of, I was just passing from one state to another. And that, I remember that it was a very glowing experience. It kind of like felt slightly freaky just before it kind of like the actual death kicked in. I think like I was a little bit scared, but not like freaked out. It wasn't a panic attack kind of situation. I've had from that to the panic attack situation.
Yeah.
And so the whole range. I've had a really interesting one that I think I told you about, that I'm literally just, the mushrooms are working and literally I blink, and after opening my eyes again, I think, oh my God, I'm dead.
Yeah.
And that's almost like, it gives you an insight as to what an instant death can be. It's almost like, your heart stops beating, or you've just had a stroke or something, and literally you just, and it gave me the kind of idea that, okay, I was dead and life was going on. And that is the message, is the impermanence, the wabi-sabi philosophy in Japanese philosophy talks about that as well. The impermanence of life, the continuity of things that are just impermanent, and that to me made a lot of sense. It's almost like nothing has changed at all. Nobody, absolutely no one, gave a shit about me dying at that particular time that I died. Yes, of course, 5 minutes later, if somebody realizes that I'm dead, they're going to freak out and start phoning an ambulance or, like crying around me. But at that particular second, when I stopped breathing, when I had my last breath out, the world continued. The birds were flying. The trees were kind of moving. Nothing stopped. And it makes you think, you're not that important. Nobody gives a shit. Yes, of course, once they pay attention to you, they give a shit. But in the greater scheme of things, we have billions of people in the planet. It's almost like, why are we so unique? Why are we so into ourselves that our lives are such a drama? That you are in that drama state all the time, and your life is a dramatic, and and
don't let be.
You cannot get over yourself because it's like everything is just so intense, and you think, and you come out of the trip thinking, actually, you feel more connected with everything.
You don't feel so scared of death. Like, I think, because this is interesting, they're giving psychedelics to people that are terminally ill as perhaps a way to deal with what you've just said. One of the things that's come to me in a psychedelic experience, ayahuasca, it showed me once. I started relaxing into this like morphine-like dream state, lucid dream, and I was following this like white light, and I was following it, and and suddenly my ego here is going, "Whoa, that's death. Don't go too far." And I panicked. But what it actually, on reflection, what that did, it felt like it brought me to the edge of death. To be able to go, what's the most, you've got 2 seconds to live. What are the most important things to you right now? Are you still worried about the argument you had with your auntie, 3-4 years ago, and you don't speak about it? Or, this is what I'm trying to say. So at that point, I got to the point where I forgave other people and I completely forgave myself. And it was just like the shit we worry about and we obsess over that just isn't important. And it's not important. Not. It doesn't matter. I've had one mushroom trip where I literally had this like thing dangling in front of me, just going, nothing matters, nothing matters, nothing matters, nothing matters. And I kept arguing with it. Nothing matters. But I haven't released my book yet. Nothing matters, nothing matters. That's all it kept doing. And it span like this for about three hours until I gave up arguing with it. And I was like, okay, you're right. And then it was all fine. So on that note, I think we should maybe bring this to a close. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I just want to thank you for inviting me. It's been fun talking about all these things.
It's fun. It's nice.
We could do it for hours and hours on end.
Maybe we can be that new like drag queen podcast.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, I'll bring my foundation next time.
Oh, again. Yeah, Wallace don't lick it all off. If people want to know more about you, I'm sure people are going to be obsessed with especially what you said about ADHD, what you talked about, your expertise is incredible. And I think I'm so proud of you. That's one of the things I've really learned to be, not to be proud of you, but, I've really seen your transformation as a person. People are going to see more of you because you're a lovable character. Tell me, where can people find you?
Well, I'm Dr. Miguel Mateas in the socials. Anyway, so Dr. Dr. Miguel Mateas, Miguel Mateas.
We'll put that in the link.
Yeah, and that's my Instagram, Twitter, .com, my website.
OnlyFans?
OnlyFans, I'm launching soon.
Is this the Swabby Savvy?
I'm waiting to lose a couple of kilos before going into the OnlyFans. But yeah, you can expect that maybe in the summer.
Well,
yeah, I'm having a nose job and a couple of laxatives before launching the OnlyFans.
Well, you should film that, and you probably get people watching that.
Yeah, well, why not? I might do.
You should do it on mushrooms at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm dying. Someone's smacking your nose. Thank you very much for listening. If you like what you see and hear, please share with your friends.